Welcome to the Maritime Executives podcast series, In the Know. I'm Tony Munoz, Editor-in-Chief. Our Executive Corner podcast will provide conversations with top executives concerning events and issues that are shaping our industry today. We will also bring you up to speed with the latest news and editorials covered by the Maritime Executive. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining In the Know. Today we're with Thomas Klenum. He is the Executive Vice President of Liberian Registries. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation there. Thank you.
And so I was reading your resume and your CV. You've had had a tremendous amount of experience, and you're a naval architect. You worked in China. You've been managing the registry in Washington, D.C., the hub of, our politics here in the United States. And Dulles is an awesome place. I've flown out of the airport numerous times. And so tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and introduce yourself to our readers and listeners.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I grew up by the sea in Denmark, so sailing, the oceans, shipping, that have always been part of my life. And as you rightly mentioned, then I'm a naval architect by educational background. And my first job after graduation, that was at AP Møller Mærsk Shipyard in Denmark. I spent a short time there. Then I joined Register in different position. I stayed there over 20 years in both technical and managerial position, based in Denmark, in China, as you mentioned, and also in the UK here in London, where I am at the moment at the IMO. Then in 2014, I joined the YCF Maritime Group as Managing Director for CNET Maritime Services and Technical Director for Liberian Registry. In end of 2019, I then relocated to HQ in Dulles, as you mentioned there, our head office just outside Washington, D.C., where I was Senior Vice President for Maritime Operation. And then from January this year, I was promoted to Executive Vice President in my current position as leading the Innovation and Regulatory Affairs. So that's very briefly my background leading up to my current position.
Yes, excellent background. I also traveled to China during the boom years of the early 2000s. Had an opportunity to be with some engineers out of Houston and a French company, Bourbon, who was building offshore vessels, and traveled with them and saw what they were doing. And they were very kind and generous with me, and shared a lot of their innovations and things of that nature. Got to see Shanghai and Yangzhou, Ningbo, and got to travel. It was good stuff. It really helped me with my education, and so it's a big part of my life. I appreciate that. So for a lot of us in the maritime industry, we know the difference, but we also have a lot of people who are nouveau to our industry, that are part of our industry. What is the difference between a classification society and a ship registry?
And that's a good question, but let me try and go back 30 years ago when I sort of entered the industry. Then there was actually a big difference between class society and flag states. They had two separate roles. The class society, they had their own rules and regulations covering hull structures, machinery, electrical installation, and so on. Whereas the flag state, they had all the statutory services with stability, fire safety, load line, life-saving appliances. So it was very divided what class and flag state were doing, and that goes both for new buildings, so with the plan approval, with the survey doing construction, and also for the in-service survey work. So that was sort of separated between the two. But then eventually, then flag state, they start delegating the statutory work to the class societies, and therefore today actually class societies, they are mainly working on behalf of the flag states. And then in turn, the flag states, they have an oversight program in place to monitor and check that the service delivery by the class societies on behalf of the flag that complies with the required quality standards. So there have been a difference or change in the relationship between class and flag over the last couple of decades. But with Liberian Registry, there's actually different there, because while most flag states have delegated it to class societies to do, then in Liberian Registry, we still have technical expertise in-house, and we also have our own inspection network. So in addition to the periodical service conducted by the class societies on our behalf, then we also do our own annual safety inspections, both to check the safety on the ship, but also as part of our oversight of the classification societies.
So the registry has about how many vessels under its purview?
I mean, today we have about 5,500 ships in the Liberian Registry, and we have been growing, I think this year about 10%. So we have enjoyed a significant growth both this year, but also on the previous years. But it's about 5,500 vessels that we have now. So
essentially, the registry provides managerial guidance, technical guidance, those sorts of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, in addition to the sort of mandatory periodical service I was mentioned before, then the class society, they do these service on our behalf. Then we also do other checks on our vessels. We have what we call a post-stay control detention prevention program. So we monitor all our vessels' movements, and we do statistical calculations on the post-stay control performance. So we use that to support the ship owners, the ship operators, to maintain a high quality and to avoid detentions in port. So and this oversight and support to the ship owner, that have actually shown very positive result that is evident from Liberian registers. We are whitelisted in all port-stay control schemes such as Tokyo MOU, Paris MOU, and also by the US Coast Guard. And in fact, with the US Coast Guard, we have just gained the Quality 21, which is the highest safety and quality standard with the US Coast Guard. Yeah.
Excellent. I remember many years ago when I was in the maritime business myself, and I worked with Crowley and their tugs. I used to go with operations managers from the different agencies, and we would go down to ships early in the morning. They had to go down and we'd meet and see what they had to do. And there were a number of ships that came in that were detained by Coast Guard for various things. And so you help your registry members meet those compliances worldwide.
And we do that worldwide. As I mentioned earlier, we have inspection networks. So we have about 350 inspectors around the world. So we are proactively supporting the ship owner. And again, we also work very closely alongside the class societies. We have the same objective, quality objective. So we are sort of jointly supporting the ship owners to quality shipping. Okay, so you have around over 5,000 ships under your registry. How many employees do you have worldwide, and do you run your own operations at ports throughout the world? Yeah, I mean, we have our inspection network, as I mentioned, about 350 inspectors that are working on our behalf with the annual safety inspection. And then in addition, we have, I think, maybe around 200 full-time employees that mainly they're based in our head office in Dulles outside Washington, D.C. And then we have around 28 regional offices where we have technical managers. We have people with registration background, so we can serve our clients around the clock. And then in addition, we also have duty officer services, so that if a ship have an issue, then we can always be contacted in all three time zones and provide technical advice and guidance, and also support with registrations and so on. Yeah. Outstanding. So some of the mandates that you're at the IMO, how appropriate. The IMO is addressing the reduction of greenhouse gases and ship emissions. Where are we today, and what are the challenges and opportunities for the shipping industry in general,
and through your leadership with your registry?
Yeah, that's a very timely question, because actually this week and next week we're leading up to the MEPC 79 meeting next week, and we are gathered here in London also this week to prepare for that meeting. And that's actually a meeting where the initial strategy on reduction of greenhouse gas that was adopted at MEPC 72 in 2018, that is up for review. So we are doing a review right now, this and next week, on the strategy with a view to change and adopt the changes at MEPC 80 in July next year. So the levels of ambition in the initial strategy, that is to reduce the CO2 emission by 40% by 2030 and by 70% by 2050. That is the initial strategy, and then all greenhouse gases to be reduced by 50%. But it is expected, and what we can also read in the news, and what is also expected to happen at the IMO level, that we will aim for a full decarbonization by 2050. So that is a significant strengthening of the strategy that will impose even bigger challenges to our industry by having to decarbonize much quicker than we initially anticipated. So in turn, that imposes very high urgency now for our industry to adopt innovative design features, new technologies, alternative fuels. However, if we as an industry can manage to meet that enormous challenge that is ahead of us, then we may create a great opportunity for the early movers to gain a competitive advantage, and in general for the maritime transportation to establish a sustainable and bright long-term future. So again, we have challenge here, but that could also be converted into an opportunity. But it's not to neglect the enormous challenge we have ahead of us and where we need to work together.
We are definitely an industry in transformation, are we not?
Yes, we are. We are in a very big transformation, and that's fortunately also from a regulatory perspective. The regulatory framework have actually changed over the last 10 years, where previously we had prescriptive rules and regulations, where we have now changed to goal-based standard and risk assessment-based approval. So even we have this big challenge ahead of us, then the regulatory framework is now allowing for innovation in ship design and adoption of new technologies and alternative fuels. So yes,
it's an amazing time, isn't it not?
I mean, that will be the key. I mean, again, first we will see what happens in July next year, where it's expected that this strategy will be strengthened, as mentioned earlier. But then we also need to get down to the work and see how we can meet this big challenge. And again, therefore, the change in the regulatory framework now allows that much needed innovation that will help us to decarbonize international shipping.
In your perspective, how are we doing as an industry overall? Are we moving forward? Are we meeting those goals? Do we have to bring some of the operators with us and help them? What is your feeling on that?
I mean, I think there are some, I would say, good initiatives going on at different locations, but it probably needs to be more joined up. But there's a lot going on in terms of research and development and try and find solutions to decarbonize. And so it sort of go hand in hand with the regulatory framework being developed at the same time as the technology and all the innovation is taking place. So I think we are moving in the right direction as an industry, but there's still a lot to be done.
So tell us about the international collaborations and some of the joint projects that Liberian Registry is doing with the industry.
Yeah, I mean, research and development, that is needed to unlock that opportunities for innovation and new technologies and alternative fuels, and that has to be done through international collaboration. Shipping is a truly global business, and the likely stakeholders in these joint industry projects, that is shipyards, it is designers, ship owners, operators, engine manufacturers, is also innovative technology providers, and then of course also class societies and flag states. So we have expertise in different areas, both from regulatory perspective and the design. So we need to work together to unlock that potential. And in fact, the Liberian Register, when this regulatory framework started changing 10 years ago, then we saw that opportunity, and we have been sort of actively pursuing participation in the joint industry project. And I think over the last 3-4 years, we have been involved in at least 30 joint industry projects, but more is needed. I mean, this is sort of by our own initiative where practically support the industry to decarbonize, but we need a more joined up effort, and we need to scale up the research and development to meet the big decarbonization challenge ahead of us. So we believe that is the way to do it, but also we are now coming into with IMO to develop new midterm measures where it will probably be market-based measures where we are considering, for example, a reward and fund scheme where the higher pollutant vessels, they will contribute to the less pollutant vessels, and that will free up some funding to do research and development work. But that is in its initial stage now to be discussed also here at the IMO. But we believe that is the right way forward, because then we will get the sufficient funding to do the research and development work, and we can engage more and more in the joint industry projects to unlock that potential to decarbonize.
It's amazing that the work that you folks are doing, and I have a lot of friends of mine who are not in the industry, and they say, "Oh, COVID, block all the shipping from happening," and tell us more about it. And they, you try to explain to people that on the docks, there's Twix cards, and we make sure that our industry is safe. We make sure that our ships are operating at high level, that our personnel were well trained. I think this industry has done a remarkable thing. Would you like to say anything else that perhaps our audience should hear?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to reiterate this change that there have been, as I mentioned, with the regulatory framework, because it can be argued we are a very traditional industry and innovation is not really been allowed due to the prescriptive rules and regulation. But as mentioned earlier, that is a very, very important step that we now allow innovation through risk assessment process to sort of justify an equivalent level of safety as the prescriptive rules are given. So I will stress that change that allows that innovation to take place. And again, with Liberian Register, as I mentioned, we saw that opportunity some years ago and have been sort of participating in this project. But also I will stress the importance of being innovative and looking at new technologies. We did that more than 10 years ago. We were the first flag state to introduce electronic certificate. And I mentioned our advanced port state control detention prevention program, also a software program that is very dynamic. It's really supporting our ship owners, ourselves, to keep the quality standard high, and the technology development that is extremely important. And we also see that now that we have that opportunity with joint industry project that to allow innovation and new technology to be adopted in new ship designs and to help decarbonize international shipping. So I think that's key point. Is very, very important to be aware of that exists. And again, we need to do the international collaboration to really increase the uptake of these new technologies and alternative fuels.
Outstanding. Thomas Klenum, thank you very much. Executive Vice President, Liberian Registry, for your time, and enjoy your time in London. I understand there's some sun out there, so but at IMO, give them our regards. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to In the Know, the Maritime Executive Podcast. We hope you'll join us again for our next exciting industry discussion. In the meantime, you can visit us at maritime-executive.com for top news on critical maritime issues.